We are back here now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk about the new kickoff format and Deebo Samuel specifically wanting to try his hand now with this new format for the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to get our first look at this new kickoff format in just a couple of days now on Thursday when the Hall of Fame game goes on August 1st between the Houston Texans and the Chicago Bears on Thursday. Unfortunately, no Caleb Williams or most of the starters, so that's a bummer, but regardless, we get some football back at least. So we'll take the good with some of the bad, but we're going to talk about Deebo, focusing on Deebo and the 49ers because he brought up this idea of wanting to try his hand out in kickoffs. You usually don't see the stars, the most important players out there because up until this point, the kickoffs were pretty dangerous, a situation where you didn't want Deebo taking unnecessary hits, unnecessary amount of contact when already in the game he was lining up in the backfield as a receiver already. They are a little bit more protected now with the rules, but regardless, you don't want them out there when you don't necessarily need them to be. But now, this new format has made the kicking game not only a bit more relevant, but a lot more significant in the turnout of some of these games. And that's what the NFL wanted to do. They don't want this to be just some traditional, irrelevant part of football. I like that they changed this. I'm a big fan of it. But now seeing this, you kind of have more incentive to go out and get yourself a Deebo, a Cordell Patterson, some of these return specialists, hopefully to give you an advantage in these games. And on the topic on being more involved in these kickoffs, on the topic of trying to get more out of this aspect of the game now, Deebo Samuel mentioned this on the possibility of being more involved in it, and he said, I wouldn't mind doing it from the get-go. I'm a team-first player, so if Kyle was like, hey man, we don't want you to do it full-time, we just use you whenever we really need it, I'm fine with that, but if you want to use me full-time, I'm all for that as well. And Deebo has some experience with kickoffs. You know, he's returned 9 kickoffs before in his NFL career. Not a lot, but, you know, he at least has done it at a time where it was a lot more dangerous, a lot more free-flowing, less structure to it. So he averaged about 25.9 yards per return. So not too bad with getting the ball back to the 25 at least. So right now he sees it as a pretty great opportunity, really, where you can get a big advantage in his terms, where the receiving team, if they make a guy miss with the amount of set blocks that there are out there, pretty much, it's almost 8 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10, a situation where you're going to get to the kicker at some point, and then at that point, I'm going to take Deebo against any kicker trying to tackle him. That's just a matter of fact. So there is some room there for excitement if you're the 49ers, because now obviously they have all this talent on their roster. They have an excess of talent, honestly, with Deebo, Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle on one side of the ball. And sometimes you can't get everybody the ball on that side. You can't get everybody 4 catches, 5 catches if you're a pass catcher, 20-plus carries for Christian McCaffrey, then involving him in the passing game. Not everyone is going to be satisfied. Not everyone's going to put up the stat line that you might expect from some of these guys based on their elite level. Now, I think with Deebo, this is exactly what he needed, not only for his benefit, but for the 49ers' benefit also, to take advantage of everybody on every side of the ball that they can, to distinguish themselves a little bit more from the Lions, the Packers, the Eagles, the Cowboys even. You have at your disposal a very unique, special player in Deebo that is already a nightmare to try and tackle. Now you put him on kickoffs where he's more involved. He can have the ball more in his hands, not just on offense where it's all predicated on the quarterback and just how everything, you know, plays out from a defensive standpoint and everything like that. Now you could almost get him the ball a lot more during the game on kickoffs. If you get scored on, at least he gets the ball now more in his hands. But this is just another dynamic that I think Deebo adds, where this is exactly, like I mentioned, what Deebo's looking for and what the 49ers could really use. Because before we talked about, I mentioned this hypothetical scenario a few shows ago with Devontae Adams, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo. There was some rumors, this story I saw where there were some considerations in trading Deebo and paying Brandon Ayuk as a possible solution to this whole situation with Brandon Ayuk and his contract. If you can't all fit it into the salary cap, why not trade Deebo? Because the idea behind that was that Deebo in the running game, that was the unique ability, right? That was what made him so special at that point in time. Adding to that running game, lining up in the backfield, being very good at it from that standpoint as well. Bringing that to the 49ers offense kind of got diminished a little bit now with Christian McCaffrey coming in, and it's not a bad thing, but you just don't have Deebo back there as much as you would maybe like to, and from that standpoint, it kind of takes away from that special ability that Deebo brought to the table. But now, when you have this whole new dynamic on the new kickoff returns and Deebo willing to do it, I think this is the perfect situation because now you get the ball in Deebo's hands a lot more, like I said, and it's pretty much like running the ball anyway, like trying to set up the blocks on the kickoffs, trying to pick the right hole to run through, manipulating the coverage teams and stuff like that. He already has some experience in a similar scenario with running the ball, and now he can bring that to the kickoff, side of things, and I think it will be very beneficial for the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk to, show everybody, show the 49ers that he could bring this other level to their team, to their goal of trying to make themselves the best team in the NFL. And that's where I think this is a no-brainer for the 49ers to actually make this go. But again, you kind of see the hesitancy from Shanahan, maybe not wanting to do this every single time, but having him back there, at least the sight of Deebo Samuel back there would change the coverage a little bit. It will change the way that the kicking team, plays a kick, fields a kick, where they kick it to on that side of the ball. It changes a lot of things, so I think it would be such a huge advantage, even more, for the 49ers to do that with Brandon Ayuk, or not with Brandon Ayuk, with Deebo Samuel. And it just allows Deebo to be that unique player again. And then, thinking long-term, if you're Deebo and you add this to your resume of what you can bring to a negotiating table, depending on how this new kickoff format sort of plays out and how much more of an advantage it could be and how it plays out in 2024, you could bring that to the negotiating table, say, look, not only am I a great receiver, you can line me up in the backfield, I've done that before, but also in the kickoff field as a returner, I'm this good when you put me back there when I'm behind a good set of blocks and we have a good kickoff return unit. I'm able to do this. And that way, maybe he gets some more money out of the 49ers from that. Maybe he moves on from the 49ers and he gets a bigger contract somewhere else because he could bring that different dimension to a different team. So that's where all this potential lies with this new kickoff format. Not only more exciting for fans to see some more kickoffs, hopefully how electrifying that is, but also for the 49ers to take advantage of this, to fully use all of their weapons at any time in the game, but also as an overall sport, having guys be more important to the outcome of the game, not just a great quarterback, great defensive players, great wide receivers. You had this whole new area that has been sort of dormant for the last 2 years, 3 years. You have new players, popping up, being difference makers. And if you have someone like Deebo at your disposal, why not use him in this dimension? I think it would be a great idea. The 49ers should take advantage of it. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. I think this would be great for them. How much, do they do it? That depends on them. And maybe they get some other guys out there. Maybe they try Elijah Mitchell out there. Maybe Christian McCaffrey. It's an idea. I highly doubt he goes out there. But, with the circumstance and everything like that, depending on if you need a good return, if it's late in the game, you want to have McCaffrey out there, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle out there as a blocker. You have so much room to really be creative with this new kickoff format, and I'm excited to see how much teams actually show in the Hall of Fame game. I saw Doug Peterson mention something that he doesn't expect too many teams to kind of show their hand in what they're really trying to do, so hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we see something exciting here, but during the regular season, if the 49ers decide to do this, I think it would just distinguish them even more as one of the top teams if they have really a difference maker on offense with all the guys that I mentioned. On defense, they're lights out. And now in the kicking game, you have Deebo in there as well. It's hard to find a weakness with this team. It really is. But that's pretty much everything that Deebo had to say on this situation. Let me know what you guys think. Is this a good idea? Should Deebo want to do this? Is this too big a risk? Please leave your guys' thoughts in the chat box or also the comment section after this video. But that'll do it for that segment. We have two more to talk about. Like I mentioned, bringing up Micah Parsons' recent comments on Malik Hooker again, on the bigger situation around Malik Hooker's previous comments on Micah Parsons' podcast and his level of focus on football and that podcast. And also, we'll talk about Jaylen Warren, the Pittsburgh Steelers running back, who has been impressing at training camp so far, and whether or not Jaylen Warren's recent rise to stardom is more of an incentive to maybe feel better about moving on from Najee Harris, or should it be more of an incentive to keep this great duo together for years to come in Pittsburgh by extending Najee Harris? I'll provide that scenario later on in the show, but for right now, we're going to hit a break, and when we return, we're going to talk about Micah Parsons and his comments on Malik Hooker.